Welcome back, everybody. It's Zach here, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. This will be going over the Week 8 waiver wire, so I'll highlight players I'd be looking to target at each position on the waiver wire ahead of Week 8. We're through 7 weeks, so we're halfway through the fantasy football season, regular season, at least for most of you guys. We got generally 14 weeks, so you kind of know where your team stands at this point, whether you got an uphill battle ahead of you to make the playoffs, or whether we're just trying to make some stashes to really boost our rosters once we get there. But either way, waivers is a really integral way to make sure that we keep making our teams better every single week. Lots of things we can do. I think there's a lot of players that are worth a look here. No crown jewels or any of that this week, though. Nobody that I would be looking to drop all my fab on by any means, but a lot of players that I think are worth talking about and a lot of things that are shaking up across the league right now. So I'll go position by position. If you guys have any specific ad drop questions, just let me know in the comments. And yeah, should be a fun one. Let's get into it. Starting things off with the quarterbacks here, I'll start things off with Caleb Williams, who just is obviously trending up. I talked about him last week's guy I'd be looking at, but now we're looking at him being through his bye. It's a fun matchup this week against the Washington Commanders. Hopefully we can see he and Jaden Daniels duke it out a little bit there. But he's a guy that I want to tie myself to just a little bit. He's obviously trending up. He was drafted to be great, and he is starting to play better over the last several weeks. With all those weapons, if he can really turn the corner and really just take things to the next level, he could be a really reliable fantasy asset. So definitely needs to be rostered. Sam Darnold continues to play really well. I know they lost to the Lions this last week, but he's got a ton of weapons. He's only going to get more when TJ Hawkinson comes back. Sam Darnold is a guy that should not be on waiver wires. Tua also could return in Week 8. They're saying he's going to practice this week. They'll activate him off IR. I do expect him to play, and we know he can be a quarterback one, so in leagues that don't have IR spots where he was dropped, absolutely needs to be a priority ad there. Russell Wilson, I mean, it's weird to mention him, but he was the quarterback 3 on the week, I believe, after, I think both Baker and Lamar ended up passing him, but he was the quarterback 1 after Sunday night. Looked pretty good, 2 rushing touchdowns, or 2 passing touchdowns and a rushing touchdown. He's going to throw the ball deep. There'll be a lot of big plays there with Russ. Not going to run the ball the way he used to, but I think he'll run a little bit more than we saw him do this last week. He could easily be a streaming option in plus matchups. So, if you want to go there, got a good matchup against the Giants this week. Drake May playing really well. Obviously has a little bit of a rushing floor. The receivers are not good enough really to sustain high levels of production there, but this defense is really bad. They'll be playing from behind, and Drake May could be a reliable streaming option. And then Bo Nix obviously isn't doing a ton from a fantasy standpoint just yet, but I believe he has like 140 rushing yards over the last 2 weeks. He's rushing the ball a ton. There are young playmakers around him. If he gets a little bit of touchdown luck here, mix in that rushing floor, it's tough to be bad for fantasy at the quarterback position if you're rushing the way he is. So he does need to at least be in the streaming conversation every single week. At running back, my still primary ad here would be Tyrone Tracy. Absolutely should be rostered at this point, but if he's not, he's still the lead back in New York. Obviously, not a great matchup coming up this week against the Steelers, one of the best defenses in the NFL. But the big question was, is he still going to be the lead back in this offense when Devin Singletary returns? And he was. He led the backfield in touches, snaps, and routes run. So he is the running back 1 in this Giants backfield. Not exactly an offense we want to be tied to here. I won't be shocked if we see Drew Lock start a game here sooner than later. Not a good situation in that New York offense, but he's a talented player. He should be given a lot of work, and we could easily see them just sort of turn it all the way over to him by the back half of the year here. So I do want Tyrone Tracy on my roster if he's still available. I want to mention Jalen Warren as well. Obviously, Najee sort of stole the show. 16 carries, I believe, for 102 yards, scored a touchdown. Obviously, Najee's playing really well right now, but Jalen Warren still looked pretty good. Had a couple of nice plays in this game. Did have 14 touches, up from 9 the week before, and he should just be getting more acclimated to this offense. He's obviously coming back in after that hamstring injury. Should get healthier and healthier. I do expect him to at least be more of a contributor down the stretch there. So, got to mention him. Also, the Steelers should dump the ball down to the running backs a lot more now. Obviously, with Fields, you were obviously going to just take off and run when things broke down, but Russ is going to be less likely to do that. More likely to dump it down to the running back. So Warren will be a little bit more valuable there. Alexander Madison, he's the clear lead running back on the Vegas offense here, and obviously not a good offense again, but in bye weeks, injury weeks, we just want to sometimes just find a way to get touches in our lineup, and Alexander Madison is getting those touches. They're obviously a low value. It's a bad offense, but if you needed to play him, he's an option, so I have to mention him. Ray Davis continues to play well, not really reliable at all. He had 6 touches in this game, and I believe only 1 in the first half, so really didn't do much at all until this game was a blowout. But Ray Davis is still a good player at this point. He proved that last week, was good in week 7, scored a touchdown. I mean, obviously, he's not a guy we can play if James Cook is healthy, but if James Cook were to go down, he's a clear, really valuable asset, and I do still think there's a chance he maybe starts getting goal line work with James Cook in there. So we'll see. This backfield's a little bit scarier for me in Buffalo, so I'm fading just a little bit in terms of what I expect out of James Cook, and then Ray Davis should be a guy that could get more involved. Kendre Miller, he's taking over as the backup running back in New Orleans, and I'm also mentioning him just because there are some trade rumors circulating about Alvin Kamara. I believe he's the only player on the Saints roster they could trade and actually save salary cap space right now, so it makes some level of sense. Their season seems to be effectively over. They went from 2-0 to 2-5 now, I believe, really quick. So not great if you're a Saints fan. Obviously, you're gonna get Derek Carr back, probably not this week, but the next, probably in line with when Olave comes back. So maybe they try and hope they can get hot there, but I don't buy it. I think Kendrick Miller should be on rosters just in case they do make that move. And then Kimani Vidal, obviously not super involved just yet, but he's the backup running back in LA. If something were to happen to Dobbins, I mean, it's not a stretch to say that Dobbins could get hurt. We've seen it before. And Vidal, he's flashed a little bit so far when he's been on the field, would be a really important part of this offense if he got that full workload, so he should be on more rosters than he is right now. Moving on to wide receiver here, Romeo Doubs will be my priority ad. He's continuing to play well. He's the wide receiver 4 over the last 2 weeks. Obviously, tiny sample size there, but he's getting the job done. 2 touchdowns over 2 games, had 8 catches for 94 yards, I believe, in this one. He's a good player. He's a much more reliable player in this offense than guys like Christian Watson and Dontavian Wicks, a much more like reliable possession receiver. If you told me he ends up leading this team in receiving yardage at the end of the year, I don't think I'd be entirely shocked. I mean, Jaden Reed's obviously the better player in this offense, but Romeo Doubs, he operates a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage than Romeo Doubs. I think Doubs is a good player, a guy, he's a talented player on a good offense. I think he's the clear wide receiver 2 there, and a guy that you can play if you need to. So Doubs needs to be on less waiver wires than he is right now. Cedric Tillman absolutely needs to be rostered at this point. Like, he's the clear wide receiver 1 in Cleveland to me. I actually talked about him as like a really deep league sleeper this offseason as someone that I always thought was talented. I just, it was going to be a really tough path for him to see a lot of touches and a lot of volume here, but I think we're seeing that path open up because obviously Amari Cooper is gone, Jerry Judy's bad, Elijah Moore is really bad. Like, Cedric Tillman is the wide receiver 1 in this offense. He'll be probably the number 2 target behind David Njoku, but he's a good player. It's not like we're just seeing him flash out of nowhere. He's gotten a lot of really great reports in training camp. He's a guy that I like, and with potentially having Jameis Winston throw him the ball, I think he could be a sneaky good ad right now. So Tillman needs to be rostered for sure. Troy Franklin, he's emerging in Denver, had 5 catches for 50 yards, 2 straight weeks playing a lot more snaps in the field. Cortland Sutton was not targeted this last week. He's been floated around as a potential trade candidate. If Sutton were to get traded, you'd see if Troy Franklin potentially emerges as the number 1 wide receiver in this offense. Already has chemistry with Bo Nix. I think Franklin, in deeper leagues, should be rostered more than he is. Keon Coleman, he's talented. I mean, he was a second round pick for a reason. Had 125 receiving yards this last week. I know it's going to be overshadowed a little bit because obviously Amari Cooper came there, but I think him being the wide receiver 2 in this offense might be a boost for him. I just don't think he was ready at like an NFL level to be a wide receiver 1 in an offense, but Amari Cooper is going to take a lot of pressure off of him. We've seen Josh Allen support multiple wide receivers before, so Coleman with his level of talent as a clear wide receiver 2 in the offense could actually be pretty reliable as like a decent flex option. And then 2 Niners I'll talk about. I guess I can rope Jake Cowling into this as well. Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall, they're so banged up. Brandon Ayuk tore his ACL. He's not going to play again this season. Tebow Samuel dealing with an illness. Hopefully he can get back here soon, but I believe he's hospitalized with pneumonia right now, so who knows how long that's going to be. Hopefully he can get back this next week, but obviously that's tough. George Kittle's dealing with a foot injury. This team is so banged up. They need anybody that's got a pulse to step up, and all of these guys are going to get opportunities. So we've seen Juwan Jennings do it. Ricky Pearsall's obviously got the draft capital. Jacob Cowling had a big play this last week. All 3 of them should probably be picked up just to see what happens, but I'd probably take them in that order: Juwan Jennings, Pearsall, Cowling. Moving on to the tight end spot here, we'll start things off with Hunter Henry. Drake May is clearly elevating this offense. Hunter Henry had another big game this week, and it's just nice knowing that if you have Hunter Henry, you have a tight end that has big games in him. Like we've seen, I think this is his 3rd big game so far this season, so you're like 3 for 7. He does kind of disappear if he doesn't have that big game, but like he's involved enough that you can play him, and with the state of the tight end position, you could do a lot worse than Hunter Henry. Noah Fant, I think I got to mention him, was involved this last week. The Seahawks are throwing the ball a ton, and DK Metcalf could miss some time with a knee injury. They play the Bills this week. That game could certainly be a shootout. I think Noah Fant's a guy that should be rostered for sure. You could certainly stream him in what should be a high-scoring game against Buffalo. And then Cade Otton, I've got to mention him here. Continues to get a ton of targets. Obviously hasn't been a ton of fantasy production so far, but they lost Evans early in the game to a hamstring injury. I'd be shocked if we see Evans play next week. And then Chris Godwin, probably done for the year with what we saw happen at the end of that game. There's going to be a lot of vacated targets in this offense, and Cade Otton should eat up at least some of those. And at the tight end position, targets mean a lot. So Cade Otton's definitely somebody that should be on rosters at this point. A lot of defenses to talk about here as well. In no particular order, I think the Ravens are a really high quality ad. They play the Browns next week. A little bit scarier, seeing that they'll have a new quarterback. But Jameis Winston, never been a guy that I'm afraid of playing a defense against, just because he'll make some mistakes, throw a couple interceptions, and then carve you up after that. So the Ravens defense is a perfectly fine option. The Lions defense, they played really great actually last week, and they get to play the Titans next week. That's fantastic. We know either Will Levis or Brayson Rudolph will be playing, and neither one of those guys can do anything. The Steelers, obviously a fantastic option. They play the Giants next week. I'd be shocked if they're on waivers, but maybe people were scared of them playing the Jets, so it's possible they got dropped. The Broncos play the Panthers. That's a plus matchup. Andy Dalton is not playing well anymore. The Chiefs, another great option here. They could actually be on waivers because they played the Niners this last week, and people could have been scared of that. They play the Raiders this week. That's a fantastic play. The Bears, another team that could be on waivers because they obviously run by, but their defense is really good. They might have one of the best pass defenses in the NFL, and they play the Commanders next week. This is kind of contingent on whether or not Jaden Daniels plays. If he plays, I think I'd be too scared, but if you tell me that you're getting the Bears against Marcus Mariota, I'd feel pretty good about starting them. And then the Jets, I know they didn't look great, but they play the Patriots. Rookie quarterback, no real weapons. They'll probably create some turnovers. The Jets need to win that game to save their season if they have any chance at all, so I do think the Jets are a decent streaming option if you need them. So that'll do it for the Week 8 waiver wire. Up next, I'll be going over trade targets, so I'll touch on players that I'd be looking to buy low or sell high on. So stay tuned for that one. That one will come out tomorrow morning probably, so keep an eye out for that. I guess tomorrow night, but it depends on when you're watching this. But regardless, that one will come out Tuesday night or Wednesday morning regardless, so stay tuned for that one. That's always going to be a fun video. It's my favorite one to make every single week. We'll go over starts and sits later on in the week. We'll cover every single game, go over which players I think should and shouldn't be in your starting lineups, and then Sunday morning I'll go live 1 hour before the games kick off. 9 a.m. Pacific time, 12 p.m. Eastern time. We'll just cover any of the latest injury updates, help you guys answer some start-sit questions live, and then we'll get you guys ready to win your matchups in Week 8. So yeah, really appreciate you guys. It's been a lot of fun. Looking forward to waivers tomorrow, and then looking forward to that trade video. So I'll catch you with the next one, guys. Peace. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.